Hi, good morning to everyone. Really very great opportunity to getting Bhagavad Gita. Today's 12th day, page number 239, verses 29th. Let's get started. Bewildered by the moods of material nature, the ignorant fully engage themselves in material activities and become attached, but the wise should not unsettle them. Although these duties are inferior due to the performer's lack of knowledge. Person who are knowledge falsely identify with gross material consciousness and are full of material designations. This body is a gift of the material nature, and one who is too much attached to the body consciousness is called Manda or lazy person. Without understanding of a spirit soul, ignorant men think of the day as the self. They accept bodily connections with others as kinsmanship. The land in which the body obtained is their object of worship, and they consider the formalities of religious rituals to be ends in themselves. Social work, nationalism, and altruism are some of the activities for such materially designated persons. Under the spell of such designations, they are always busy in the material field. For them, spiritual realization is a myth, and they are not interested. Those who are enlightened in a spiritual life, however, should not try to agitate such materially engrossed persons. Better to prosecute one's own spiritual activities silently. Such bewildered persons may be engaged in such primary moral principles of life as non-violence and similar materially benevolent work. Men who are ignorant cannot appreciate activities in Christian consciousness, and therefore Lord Christian advises us not to disturb them and simply waste valuable time. But the devotees of the Lord are more kind than the Lord because they understand the purpose of the Lord. Consequently, they undertake all kinds of risks, even to the point of approaching ignorant men to try engage them in the acts of Christian consciousness, which are absolutely necessary for the human being. Verse is 30th. Therefore, O Arjun, surrendering all your works unto me, with full knowledge of me, without desires for profit, with no claims to proprietorship, and free from lethargy, fight. This verse clearly indicates the purpose of the Bhagavad Gita. The Lord instructions that one has to become fully Christian conscious to discharge duties, as if in military discipline such an injunction may make things a little difficult. Nevertheless, duties must be carried out with dependence or Christian because that is the constitutional position of the living entity. The living entity cannot be happy independent of the cooperation of the Supreme Lord because the eternal constitutional position of the living entity is to become subordinate to the desires of the Lord. Arjun was therefore ordered by Sri Krishna to fight as if the Lord were his military commander. One has to sacrifice everything for the good will of the Supreme Lord and at the same time discharge prescribed duties without claiming proprietorship. Arjun did not have to consider the order of the Lord. He had only to execute his order. The Supreme Lord is the soul of all souls. Therefore, one who depends solely and wholly on the Supreme Soul without personal consideration, or in other words, one who is fully Christian conscious is called Adhyatma Chets. Niraish means that one has to act on the order of the master but should not expect fruitive results. The cashier may count millions of dollars for his employer, but he does not claim a cent for himself. Similarly, one has to realize that nothing in the world belongs to any individual person, but that everything belongs to the Supreme Lord. That is the real purport of me or unto me. And one acts in such Christian consciousness, certainly he does not claim proprietorship over anything. This consciousness is called Nirman, or nothing is mine. And if there is any reluctance to execute such a stern order, which is without consideration of so-called kinsman in the bodily relationship, that reluctance should be thrown off. In this way, one may become Vikat Javra, or without feverish mentality or lethargy. Everyone, according to his quality and position, has a particular type of work to discharge, and all such duties may be discharged in Christian consciousness as described above, that will lead one to the path of liberation. वैसे is 31st. Those persons who execute their duties according to my injunctions and who follow this teaching faithfully without envy become free from the bondage of fruitive actions, the injunctions of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Christian is the essence of all Vedic wisdoms and therefore is eternally true without exception. As the Veds are eternal, so this truth of Christian consciousness is also eternal. One should have firm faith in this injunction without envying the Lord. There are many philosophers who write comments on the Bhagavad Gita but have no faith in Krishna. They will never be liberated from the bondage of fruitive action. But an ordinary man with firm faith in the eternal injunctions of the Lord, even though unable to execute such orders, becomes liberated from the bondage of the law of Trump. In the beginning of Christian consciousness, one may not fully discharge the injunctions of the Lord, but because one is not resentful of this principle and works sincerely without consideration of defeat and hopelessness, he will surely be promoted to the stage of pure Christian consciousness. Verse 32, 32nd. But those who, out of envy, disregard these teachings and do not follow them are to be considered barefoot of all knowledge, befooled and ruined in their endeavors for perfection. The flaw of not being Christian conscious is clearly stated herein, as there is punishment for disobedience to the order of the Supreme Executive Heart. So, there is certainly punishment for disobedience to the order of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. A disobedient person, however great he may be, he is ignorant of his own self and of the Supreme Brahman, and the personality of Godhead. Due to a vacant heart, therefore, there is no hope perfection of life for him. Verse is 33rd. Even a man of knowledge acts according to his own nature. For everyone follows the nature he has acquired from the three modes. What can repression accomplish unless one is situated on the transcendental platform of Christian consciousness? He cannot get free from the influence of the modes of material nature, as it is confirmed by the Lord in the 7th chapter. Therefore, even for the most highly educated person on the mundane plan, it is possible to get out of the entanglement of Maya simply by theoretical knowledge or by separating the soul from the body. There are many so-called spiritual how outwardly pose as advanced in the science, but inwardly or privately are completely under particular modes of nature, which they are unable to surpass academically. One may be very large, but because of his long association with material nature, he is in bondage. Christian consciousness helps one to get out of the material entanglement, even though one may be engaged in his prescribed duties in terms of material existence. Therefore, without being fully in Christian consciousness, one should not give up his occupational duties. No one should suddenly give up his prescribed duties and become a so called yogi or transcendentalists artificially. It is better transcendentalist artificially. It is better to be situated in one's position and to try to attain Krishna consciousness under superior training. Thus, one may be freed from the clutch. Verse 34. There are principles to regulate attachment and aversion pertaining to the senses and their objects. One should not come under the control of such attachment and aversion because they are stumbling blocks on the path of self-realization. Those who are in Krishna consciousness are naturally reluctant to engage in material sense gratification, but those who are not in such consciousness should follow the rules and regulations of the revealed scriptures. Unrestricted sense enjoyment is the cause of material engagement, but one who follows the rules and regulations of the revealed scriptures does not become entangled by the sense objects. For example, sex enjoyment is a necessity for the conditioned soul, and sex enjoyment is followed under the license of marriage. Twice, according to scriptural injunctions, one is forbidden to engage in sex relationships with any woman other than one's wife. All other women are to be considered as one's mother, but in spite of such injunctions, a man is still inclined to have sex relationships with other women. These propensities are to be curbed, otherwise they will be stumbling blocks on the path of self-realization. As long as the material body is there, the necessities of the material body are allowed, but under rules and regulations, and yet we should not rely upon the control of such allowances. One has to follow those rules and regulations unattached to them, because practice of sense gratification under regulations may also lead one to go astray, as much as there is always a chance of an accident, even on the royal roads. Although they may be very carefully maintained, no one can guarantee that there will be no danger even on the safest road. The sense enjoyment spirit has been current a very long time owing to material association. Therefore, in spite of regulated sense enjoyment, there is every chance of falling down. Therefore, any attachment for regulated sense enjoyment must also be avoided by all means. But attachment to Krishna consciousness or acting always in the loving service of Krishna detaches one from all kinds of sensory activities. Therefore, no one should try to be detached from Krishna consciousness. at any stage of life. The whole purpose of detachment from all kinds of sense attachment is ultimately to become situated on the platform of Christian consciousness. Verse is 35th. It is far better to discharge one's prescribed duties even though faultily than another's duties perfectly. Destruction in the course of performing one's own duties better than engaging in another's duties. For to follow another's path is dangerous. One should there discharge his prescribed duties in full Christian consciousness rather than those prescribed for others. Materially prescribed duties are duties joined and joined according to one's psychophysical condition under the spell of the modes of material nature. Spiritual duties are as ordered by the spiritual master for the transcendental service of Christian. But whether material or spiritual, one should stick to his prescribed duties even up to death, rather than initiate another's prescribed duties. Duties on the spiritual platform and duties on the material platform may be different, but the principle of following the authorized direction is always good for the performer. When one is under the spell of the modes of material nature, one should follow the prescribed rules for his particular situation and should not imitate others. For example, a Brahman who is in the mode of goodness is non-violent, whereas a Kshatriya who is in the mode of passion is allowed to be violent. As such, for a Kshatriya, it is better to be vanquished following the rules of violence than to imitate a Brahma who follows the principles of non-violence. Everyone has to cleanse his heart by gradual process, not abruptly. However, when one transcends the modes of material nature and is fully situated in Christian consciousness, he can perform anything and everything under the direction of a bona fide spiritual master. In that complete stage of Christian consciousness, the Kshatriya may act as a Brahma or a Brahman may act as a Kshatriya in the transcendental stage. The distinctions of the material world do not apply. For example, Viswamitra was originally a Kshatriya, but later on acted as a Brahman, whereas Parshuram was a Brahman, but later on he acted as a Kshatriya. Being transcendently situated, they could do so, but as long as one is on the material platform, he must perform his duties according to the modes of material nature. At the same time, he must have a full sense of Christian consciousness. Verse is 36. Arjun said, O descendant of Vasni, By what is one impelled to sinful acts, even unwillingly, as if engaged by force? A living entity, as part and parcel of the Supreme, is originally spiritual, pure, and free from all material contamination. Therefore, by nature, he is not subject to the sins of the material world. But when he is in contact with the material nature, he acts in many sinful ways without hesitation and sometimes even against his will. As such, Arjun's question to Krishna is very sanguine as to the perverted nature of the living entities. Although the living entity sometimes does not want to act in sin, he is still forced to act. Sinful actions are not, however, impelled by the super soul within, but are due to another cause, as the Lord explains in the next verse. Verses 37. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, It is lust only, Arjun, which is born of contact with the material mode of passion and later transferred into wrath, and which is the all-devouring sinful enemy of this world. When a living entity comes in contact with the material creation, his eternal love for creation is transformed into lust in association with the mode of passion, or in other words, the sense of love of God becomes transformed into lust as milk in contact with a tamarind is transformed into yogurt. Then again, when lust is unsatisfied, it turns into wrath. Wrath is transformed into illusion, and illusion continues the material existence. Therefore, lust is the greatest enemy of the living entity, and it is lust only which induces the pure living entity to remain entangled in the material world. Wrath is the manifestation of the mode of ignorance. These modes exhibit themselves as wrath and other corollaries if they have the mode of passion, instead of being degraded into the mode of ignorance, is elevated to the mode of goodness by prescribed method of living and acting. Then one can be saved from the degradation of wrath by spiritual attachment. The Supreme Personality of Godhead expanded himself into many for his ever-increasing spiritual bliss, and the living entities are parts and parcels of this spiritual bliss. They also have partial independence, but by misuse of their independence, when the service attitude is transformed into the propensity for sense enjoyment, they come under the sway of lust. This material creation is created by the Lord to give facility to the conditioned souls to fulfill these lustful propensities, and when completely baffled by prolonged lustful activities, the living entities begin to inquire but their real position. This inquiry is the beginning of the Vedanta Sutra, wherein it is said one should inquire into the Supreme, and the Supreme is defined in Srimad Bhagavatam as the origin of everything is a Supreme Brahman. Therefore, the origin of the lust is also in the Supreme. If, therefore, lust is informed into love for the Supreme or transformed into Krishna consciousness, or in other words, desiring everything for Krishna, then both lust and wrath can be spiritualized. Hanuman, the great servitor of Lord Ram, exhibited his wrath by burning the golden city of Ravan. But by doing so, he became the greatest devotee of the Lord. Here also in Bhagavad Gita, the Lord induces Arjuna to engage his wrath upon his enemies for the satisfaction of the Lord. Therefore, lust and wrath, when they are employed in Krishna consciousness, become our friends instead of our enemies. Verses 38. As fire is covered by smoke, as a mirror is covered by dust, or as the embryo is covered by the womb, the living entity is similarly covered by different degrees of this lust. There are 3 degrees of covering of the living entity by which his pure consciousness is obscured. This covering is but lust under different manifestation, like smoke in the fire, dust on the mirror, and the worm about the embryo. When lust is compared to smoke, it is understood that the fire of living spark can be a little perceived. In other words, when the living entity exhibits his Krishna consciousness slightly, he may be likened to the fire covered by smoke. Although fire is necessary where there is smoke, there is no overt manifestation of fire in the early stage. This stage is like the beginning of Krishna consciousness. The dust on the mirror refers to a cleansing process of the mirror of the mind by so many spiritual methods. The best process is to chant the holy names of the Lord. The embryo covered by the womb is an analogy illustrating a helpless position, for the child in the womb is so helpless that he cannot even move. This stage of living condition can be compared to that of the trees. The trees are also living entities, but they have been put in such a condition of life by such a great exhibition of lust that they are almost void of all consciousness. The covered mirror is compared to the birds and beasts, and the smoke covered fire is compared to the human being. In the form of a human being, the living entity may revive a little Krishna consciousness, and if he makes further development, the fire of spiritual life can be kindled in the human form of life. By careful handling of the smoke in the fire, fire can be made to blast. Therefore, the human form of life is a chance for the living entity to escape the entanglement of material existence in the human form of life. One can conquer the enemy lust by cultivation of Krishna consciousness under our guidance. Verse is 39th. Thus the wise living entity's pure consciousness becomes covered by his eternal enemy in the form of lust, which is never satisfied and which once burns like fire. It is said in the Manu Smriti that lust cannot be satisfied by any amount of sense enjoyment, just as fire is never extinguished by a constant supply of fuel. In the material world, the center of all activities is sex, and thus the material world is called Methunya Agra, or the shackles of sex, or the shackles of sex life. In the ordinary prison house, criminals are kept within bars. Similarly, the criminals who are disobedient to the laws of the Lord are shackled by sex life. Advancement of material civilization on the basis of sense gratification means increasing the duration of the material existence of a living entity. Therefore, this lust is a symbol of ignorance by which the living entity is kept within the material world. While one enjoys sense gratification, it may be that there is some feeling of happiness, but actually that so-called feeling of happiness is the ultimate enemy of the sense enjoyer. Verse is 40. The senses, the mind, and the intelligence are the sitting places of this lust. Through them, lust covers the real knowledge of the living entity and bewilders him. The enemy has captured different strategic positions in the body of the conditioned soul, and therefore Lord Krishna is giving hints of those places, so that one who wants to conquer the enemy may know where he can be found. Mind is the center of all the activities of the senses, and thus when we hear about sense objects, the mind generally becomes a reservoir of all ideas of sense gratification, and as a result, the mind and the senses become the repositories of lust. Next, the intelligence department becomes the capital of such lustful propensities. Intelligence is the immediate next door neighbor of the spirit soul. Lusty intelligence influences the spirit soul to acquire the false ego and identify itself with matter and thus with the mind and senses. The spirit soul becomes addicted, addicted to enjoying the material senses and mistakes. This as true happiness. This force identification of the spirit soul is very nicely explained in the Srimad Bhagavatam. A human being who identifies this body made of three elements with his self, who considers the byproducts of the body to be his kinsman, who considers the land of birth worshipable, and who goes to the place of pilgrimage simply to take a bath rather than meet men of transcendental knowledge there, is to be considered like an ass or a cow. 41st verse saying, therefore, O Arjun, best of the breath in the very beginning curve, this great symbol of sin, lust, by regulating the senses, and the slay, this destroyer of knowledge and self-realization. The Lord advised Arjuna to regulate the sense from the very beginning so that he could curb the greatest sinful enemy, lust, which destroys the urge for self-realization and specific knowledge of the self. Janan refers to the knowledge of self as distinguished from non-self, or in other words, knowledge that the spirit soul is not the body. Vijnan refers to specific knowledge of the spirit soul's constitutional position and his relationship to the Supreme Soul. It is explained thus in the Srimad Bhagavatam. The knowledge of the Self and Supreme Self is very confidential and mysterious, but such knowledge and specific realization can be understood if explained with their various aspects by the Lord Himself. Bhagavad Gita gives us the general and specific knowledge of the Self. The living entities are parts and parcels of the Lord, and therefore they are simply need to serve the Lord. This consciousness is called Krishna consciousness. So, from the very beginning of life, one has to learn this Krishna consciousness, and thereby one may become fully Krishna conscious and act accordingly. Lust is only the perverted reflection of the Lord of God, which is natural for every living entity. But if one is educated in Krishna consciousness from the very beginning, that natural love of God cannot deteriorate into lust. When love of God deteriorates into lust, it is very difficult to return to the normal condition. Nonetheless, Krishna consciousness is so powerful that even a late beginner can become a lover of God by following the regulative principles of devotional service. So, from any stage of life or from the time of understanding its urgency, one can begin regulating the senses in Krishna consciousness, devotional service of the Lord, and turn the lust into love of Godhead. The highest perfectional stage of human life. Verse is 42nd. The working senses are superior to dull matter. Mind is higher than the senses. Intelligent is still higher than the mind, and he, the soul, is even higher than the intelligence. The senses are different outlets for the activities of lust. Lust is reserved within the body, but it is given vent through the senses. Therefore, the senses are superior to the body as a whole. These outlets are not in use when there is superior consciousness or Christian consciousness. In Christian consciousness, the soul makes direct connection with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, the hierarchy of bodily functions as described here ultimately ends in the Supreme Soul. Bodily action means the function of the senses, and stopping the senses means stopping all bodily action. But since the mind is active, then even though the body may be silent and at rest, the mind will act as it does during dreaming. But above the mind is the determination of the intelligence, and above the intelligence is the soul proper. If therefore the soul is directly engaged with the Supreme, naturally all other subordinates, namely the intelligence, mind, and senses, will be automatically engaged. In the Katha Upanishad, there is a similar passage in which it is said that the objects of sense gratification are superior to the sense, and mind is superior to the sense objects. If therefore the mind is directly engaged in the service of the Lord constantly, then there is no chance that the sense will become engaged in other ways. This mental attitude, then there is no chance that the senses will become engaged in others' ways. This mental attitude has already been explained. If the mind is engaged in the transcendental service of the Lord, there is no chance of its being engaged in the lower propensities in the Katha Upanishad. The soul has been described as Mahan, the great. Therefore, the soul is above all, namely the sense objects, the senses, the mind, and the intelligence. Therefore, directly understanding the constitutional position of the soul is the solution of the whole problem. With intelligence, one has to seek out the constitutional position of the soul and then engage the mind always in Christian consciousness. That solves the whole problem. A neophyte spiritualists is generally advised to keep aloof from the objects of the senses. But aside from that, one has to strengthen the mind by use of intelligence. If by intelligence one engage one's mind in Christian consciousness by complete surrender unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then automatically the mind becomes stronger. And even though the sense are very strong like serpents, they will be no more effective than serpents with broken fangs. But even though the soul is the master of the intelligence and mind, and the senses also, still unless it is strengthened by association with Christian in Christian consciousnesses, there is very chance of falling down due to the agitate mind. 43rd. Thus, knowing oneself to be transcendental to the material senses, mind and intelligence. Almighty armed Arjun, one should steady the mind by deliberate spiritual intelligence, Christian consciousness, and thus by spiritual strength. Conquer this insatiable enemy known as lust. This third chapter of the Bhagavad Gita is conclusively directed to Christian consciousness by knowing oneself as the eternal servitor of the Supreme Personality of Godhead without considering impersonal voidness the ultimate end in the material existence of life. One is certainly influenced by propensities for lust and desire for dominating the resources of material nature. Desire for overloading and for sense gratification is the greatest enemy of the conditioned soul, but by the strength of Christian consciousness, one can control the material senses, the mind and the intelligence. One may not give a work and prescribed duties all of a sudden, but by gradually developing Christian consciousness, one can be situated in a transcendental position without being influenced by the material senses and the mind. B. Steady intelligence, direct towards one's pure identity. This is the sum total of the chapter in the immature stage of material existence. The philosophical speculation and artificial attempts to control the senses by the so-called practice of yogic postures can never help a man toward spiritual life. He must be trained in Christian consciousness by higher intelligence. Thus, and the Bhakti Vedanta purports to the third chapter of the Srimad Bhagavad Gita in the matter of Karma Yoga, or the discharge of one's prescribed duty in Christian consciousness. Chapter is fourth, Transcendental Knowledge. Verse is first. The personality of Godhead, Lord Shri Krishna, said, I instructed this imperishable science of yoga to the sun god, Vivasvan, and Vivasvan instructed it to Manu, the father of mankind, and Manu in turn instructed it to Ikshvaku. Here we find the history of the Bhagavad Gita traced from a remote time when it was delivered to the royal order of all planets, beginning from the sun planet. The kings of all planets are specially meant for the protection of the inhabitants, and therefore the royal order should understand the science of Bhagavad Gita in order to be able to rule the citizens and protect them from material bondage to lust. Human life is made for cultivation of spiritual knowledge in eternal relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and the executive heads of all status, states and all planets are obligated to impart this lesson to the citizens by education, culture and devotion. In other words, the executive heads of all states are intended to spread the science of Christian consciousness so that the people may take advantage of this great science and pursue a successful path, utilizing the opportunity of the human form of life. In this millennium, the sun god is known as Vivaswan, the king of the sun, which is the origin of all planets within the solar system. In the Brahm Samhit, it is stated, let me worship Lord Brahma said, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Govind Krishna, who is the original person and under whose order the sun, which is the king of all planets, is assuming immense power and heat. The sun represents the eye of the Lord and traverses its orbit in obedience to his order. The sun is the king of the planets and the sun god, at present of the name Vivaswan, rules and the sun planet, which is controlling all other planets by supplying heat and light. He is rotating under the orders of Krishna, and the Lord Krishna originally made Vivaswan his first disciple to understand the science of Bhagavad Gita. The Gita is not, therefore, a speculative treatise for the insignificant mundane scholar, but is a standard book of knowledge coming down from time immemorial in the Mahabharata. We can trace out the history of the Gita as follows. In the beginning of the millennium known as Treta Yuga, the science of the relationship with the Supreme was delivered by Vivaswan to Manu. Manu, being the father of mankind, gave it to his son Maharaj Ikshvaku, the king of this earth planet and forefather of the Raghu dynasty, in which Lord Ramchandra appeared. Therefore, Bhagavad Gita existed in human society from the time of Maharaja Ikshvaku. At the present moment, we have just passed through 5,000 years of Kali Yuga, which lasts 4,32,000 years. Before this, there was Dwapar Yuga, 8 lakh years, and before that there was Treta Yuga, 1 crore 2 lakh years. Thus, Psalms 2 lakh 2 crore 5,000 years ago. Manu spoke the Bhagavad Gita to his disciple and son Maharaja Ikshvaku, the king of this planet Earth. The age of the current Manu is calculated to last some 3 crore 5 lakh 305 million 3000 years, of which 120 million 400,000 have passed. Accepting that before the birth of Manu, the Gita was spoken by the Lord, his disciple, the sun god Vivaswan, a rough estimate is that the Gita was spoken at least 120 million 400,000 years ago, and in human society it has been extant for 2 million years. It was respoken by the Lord again to Arjun about 5,000 years ago. That is the rough estimate of the history of the Gita. According to the Gita itself and according to the version of the speaker, Lord Shri Krishna, it was spoken to the sun god Vivaswan because he is also Kshatriya and is a son and is the father of all Kshatriya who are descendants of the sun god or the Surya ones. Kshatriyas, because Bhagavad Gita is as good as the Veds, being spoken by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This knowledge is superhuman since the Vedic instructions are accepted as they are without human interpretations. The Gita was therefore be accepted without mundane interpretations. The mundane wranglers may speculate on the Gita in their own ways, but that is not Bhagavad Gita as it is. Therefore, Bhagavad Gita has to be accepted as it is from the disciplic section, and it is described herein